I want to do just like some Detroit Lions rookie comparisons. We're gonna start with the two rookies that the Lions took in the first round. And I know that like a lot of experts have already done this. They've already said like, oh, and it's common, right? You have these new prospects that come in, and draft analysts get them. They break down their film, and they're saying, hey, this player reminds me of X. And the one problem that I have with that, it's always on the high side. It's always the ceiling that like, hey, this player can be this. And the reality is that player could be that, but that player could also have a floor that could be somebody else. And so what I wanted to do in prepping for this stream was like I wanted to look at a couple guys. I wanted to look at Jahmyr Gibbs and Jack Campbell first, and really just kind of, from my perspective, going through a couple games, trying to understand what I think their ceilings are and what I think their floors are, so that as a fan, you guys will kind of get to know this about me as I continue to stream. I try to be as realistic as I can be. I try not to get too high, try not to get too low. I try to stay as even keel as I can when watching my team. Um, but and in doing so, I'm aware that players have ceilings and players have floors. So how bad is the floor in some of these situations? And I'm hoping, like, again, let's make this a conversation. Feel free to disagree with me. I'm sure you guys will. But let's start with Jahmyr Gibbs. My ceiling comparison for him is Christian McCaffrey and Jamal Charles. Now, I don't know if enough people are giving him this comparison. Um, I know I've heard a lot of people say Alvin Kamara, and I get why they say Alvin Kamara, but I think he will have Alvin Kamara type usage. But when you look at his play style and what he actually does on the football field, it's much more similar to what Christian McCaffrey does and what Jamal Charles does. And when I say that, I would love for you guys to go back, look at how Christian McCaffrey runs, pull up some of his highlights, and do the same for Jamal Charles. In the fact that like they're not overly like shake and bake type of running backs. They're also not overly powerful running backs. They're not going to necessarily try to bowl over people, and they're not looking to again dance a lot when they hit a hole. They are very good running backs that have great vision and great explosion, and that is something that I see in Jahmyr Gibbs um, play in and play out. He is very good when he's able to see a hole and see a gap, and he hits that gap. And when he hits that gap, you can definitely chalk up like 6+ yards. Like he's going to take that a very long ways, and he's going to again more on the Jamal Charles side of things. He's going to run away from guys. He has that gear to really take the top off of a defense, or to expose a defense if they're not accounting for their gaps properly. He has that home run hit ability. Again, in the sense of Christian McCaffrey, he has that do it all ability where Christian McCaffrey is a great receiver. You can flex him out wide, you can send him in motion, you can run screens, you can do all of these different things with Christian McCaffrey. The same is true for Jahmyr Gibbs. He can run all of the same routes. You can have that type of flexibility to where your offense is a little more um, difficult to predict, because he can be in so many different places. But he's also good when catching the ball. So he can catch, make a cut, and pick up yards after the catch. Very similar to again Christian McCaffrey and Jamal Charles. Um, Shout out to you, Big Teeth. Those are great comparisons. I appreciate it, man. Um, let's see if you feel that same way about his floor. Now, his floor is not going to make guys happy. If you were not a fan of taking Jahmyr Gibbs in the first, you are not going to like his floor at all when I looked at it. And Jahmyr Gibbs' floor to me is Theo Riddick. And this is why. So for all of the good things that Jahmyr Gibbs does, there are some things that he does where you can see if he doesn't improve at them, he's going to get penciled into a very specific role, the same way Theo Riddick did when Theo Riddick was in Detroit. Theo Riddick obviously was a running back, and he was very good at catching the ball. But what he struggled at was actually like running in between the tackles, or being able to be productive as an actual runner of the football. So anytime they brought Theo Riddick into the game, it became very predictable. Like, okay, they're going to run some type of halfback option, halfback angle. Theo Riddick's more than likely going into the passing game. Because they're not going to hand it to him. They're not going to hand it to him in short down situations. They're not going to hand it to him on 3rd and 1, or anything like that, or on 1st and 10. Like, they're not handing him the ball. And while Jahmyr Gibbs gets a lot of touches, like he got touches to be able to run, what you also saw is, like I said earlier, when he sees a hole, he bursts through a hole and he can pick up yards. What happens though is if there's not a hole, Jahmyr Gibbs has this tendency to press against the line and then he has nowhere to go. And so he tries to bounce. And then from that point on, like you're not getting anything out of him. He's getting probably a yard. He's if not losing yardage because he just doesn't have the strength or the ability to burst through tackles. Again, similar to Theo Riddick in that like Theo Riddick wasn't going to truck anybody. He wasn't going to shake anybody. It was he was going to get what he could get and then he was going to go down. And that's kind of what you see with Jahmyr Gibbs is that like he if he can't have an easy lane to pick up yardage, he becomes very easy to box in. He doesn't break a lot of tackles. Again, you watch watch some of his tape. I specifically watched the Texas game, the Tennessee game, the Arkansas game, and I believe the Auburn game. Oh, and the LSU game. He gets like he kind of gets hit a lot. First guy that usually touches him brings him down. It's not a lot of like powering through tackles. And that's I think that has more to do with his size. You know, he's 5'9", just under 200 pounds, so he's not this big, stocky back. So that's going to be a problem for him. What Jahmyr Gibbs is going to have to do so that he doesn't get penciled into a Theo Riddick type role is that he's going to have to be explosive um, in the run game more so than the pass game. Like we know what I'm very confident what Jahmyr Gibbs will do in the pass game. What I need for him to do is be dynamic in the run game. And again, to be more Christian McCaffrey, be more Jamal Charles, even be a little more Alvin Kamara, because Alvin Kamara came from a similar system where he, you know, it's a lot of shotgun, a lot of, you know, inside zone, outside zone type of runs. But when he got to the Saints, you saw him start to get put in more single back formations, and he started to become a better inside the tackles or in between the tackles type of runner, and to do those types of things. So this is not to say that Jahmyr Gibbs can't become those things, but how he currently played in Alabama would lean itself to like, hey, if he doesn't develop these skill sets, if he doesn't become a better between the tackles runner, if he doesn't become more dynamic in the run game, he's destined for a Theo Riddick type of role where like, hey, you're only going to get snaps on third down, and it's going like, and people are going to probably know that we're throwing it to you. Um, and again, I don't. That's not what you want when you're investing a first round pick and a running back that high.